Now, I talked earlier about the huge pressure now on families who haven't just lost their jobs but are now made virtual prisoners in their own homes, banned from even inviting a friend or going to visit family. And even just sitting on a park bench, penalty, a fine or jail time. Well, last night we also showed you that alcohol sales are up dramatically, and the Victorian government, the most draconian so far, is so worried about domestic violence it's actually banned gun sales. So what dangers are there in effectively locking people away in their homes for this long, and many of them feeling like they're in solitary confinement? In 6 months this is going to go on. Mind you, that's what the governments are saying, without being able to see your loved ones or engage with your community. Well, Clare Rowe is a leading psychologist who specialises in children and families, and she joins me now. Clare, it's great to catch up again. How worried are you about what's actually now going on in the houses that are now essentially closed to visitors?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Look, I am worried, and I suppose it comes down to how long this is going to go for. And after saying that, we need to do what the health experts advise us to do. But as you mentioned, there's a couple of issues there. One is the increase in alcohol usage. There was a bit of a scare tactic a week or so ago, I know, when people started stockpiling six-packs and bottles of wine, like the toilet paper. It was the new toilet paper. So that's a little bit scary. Look, people use alcohol to relax. It's certainly a time of high social stress and anxiety, and people use that to relax. I commented the other day that I feel like I'm in between that kind of Christmas, New Year period. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. And I think that's dangerous for some people, and not necessarily people who have a pre-existing problem with alcohol, but the person whose structure has diminished, and we're taking away the confinements of what people know as their structured day. And that essentially is work for most people. So we break down those barriers and take that structure away. It all becomes a bit loose, and then you add the pressures of stress and the kids at home 24/7, and suddenly 1 o'clock at 5 o'clock is now 4 o'clock, is now 3 o'clock, and I have a lot of girlfriends and a lot of kind of social media posts going around making a joke and light of that, and I suppose it is funny at times. And then there's that very real statistic that alcohol sales have spiked. And so people will be drinking more and feel as if they are in that no man's land of kind of at work, kind of not, and may turn to increased alcohol use.
And look, we've also got campaigners against domestic violence worrying and saying this lockdown could lead to more family abuse. I know of one provider that the phones are going nuts already. The way we've structured all this, many women will probably feel that there's nowhere even to escape to. And I'm just wondering, I don't want to over-dramatise. I know I'm making a point that there's social damage on one side to outweigh, to balance against the danger on the other. But are we, in fact, with this lockdown, putting people in real danger?
There will be some people who are in increased threatening situations in a lockdown and in confinement. That's absolutely happens in most crises in history. We know that. We know from other countries who have been through this that we're a couple of weeks behind. Most European countries, their domestic violence helplines have a 50 to 70% increase in the first couple of days of this confinement period. So it's a no-brainer, and it's very predictable for people that provide those services that you have a couple who already had maybe a history of some domestic violence. You add in financial stress, which is a massive contributor, and then you're telling these people to confine themselves in a home together with children 24/7 and add alcohol. So it's a no-brainer. This is a perfect storm, Andrew. This is a perfect storm for domestic violence. And these are only noting the figures of, I suppose, victims that can reach out. And I think we'll actually have an explosion of reported cases of domestic violence after this period, and those who get through this period will be able to maybe share that story. So look, in the meantime, we need to get that message out to both victims that you are heard, there are services out there, and I would hate for this social isolation policy by the government to be used in some type of controlling and coercive way by perpetrators in order to make people stay in their house. It is absolutely, no one would debate a necessity to leave your house if you have concerns over your safety or the safety of your children. You need to leave the house.
Well, exactly right, Claire. But I mean, there are other people who are simply lonely. I mean, you think of the widows, the widowers, people who don't have a partner, not able to go out, not able to reach out. Churches closed, gatherings closed, pubs, restaurants, anything. I mean, I've really heard that Friends for Good, which is a Melbourne service that tackles loneliness, seen a 200% rise in calls to its hotline. I mean, I think there's some people are going to crack under this pressure.
Yeah, they will. If it wasn't so just dreadful, I would say this is just this massive psychological experiment on a global scale. I'm concerned as a psychologist, we have stripped people of anything that brings joy and happiness. So, all our recreation and our social Friday night get-togethers and our sports and our, anything that brings us some type of joy and happiness and provides relaxation, we've taken away and said you can't have that for a period of time. I don't think we've ever been asked to do that before. I mean, I can't remember of time, even through world wars, shops were open and people tried to go about their business. At the same time, I try and encourage people clinically when I'm working with them to try and keep that perspective. And I know that I certainly do. And I try and say, right, well, previous generations have certainly been called up for a lot more than this. And we're being asked to stay indoors and we can do this to a point. But yes, I don't know, Andrew, the future of, this is 1 week in. I would even argue, actually, there's some positives for families I'm seeing of a 1 or 2 weeks confinement together. They're actually forced to slow down.
I can understand people doing it if it's 2 weeks and saying I can see the end and I can do 2 weeks, that's fine.
Yep.
But 6 months, we're told, and I think that is totally unrealistic, and the government will and can now, because of its fantastic efforts, can afford and must change very soon to a new strategy now that it's brought us this wonderful time. Clare Rowe, thank you so much indeed for your time.